Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bob Pompiani, soon to be joined by Missy Matthews. This is the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex on the south side as the Steelers get ready for a Monday night football game. Coming off a loss, a tough one, as they played probably the best first half offensively of the season and led Cincinnati at halftime, only to see that disappear quite quickly in the second half. When Joe Burrow and the Bengals took over, Steelers gave up some long drives defensively. They also missed opportunities when the defense turned the ball over in prime scoring areas. So those are things they'd like to correct as they head into Indianapolis this week, take on the Colts and new head coach Jeff Saturday. The Steelers are 3-7. The Colts are 4-6-1. They're coming off a game that they felt they should have won against the Philadelphia Eagles, had them down early by double digits, but the Eagles came back to make it a 9-1 season for them so far in a 1-point win against the Colts. And quite frankly, the Colts have been in a lot of games they lost. They actually beat the Kansas City Chiefs this year and have been in a lot of games. They got, obviously, new coaching situation on hand. They have a lot of veterans on the coaching staff, and I'm sure Jeff Saturday will tap into their ability to get things done, and perhaps that's what it is so far. Experienced guys like Gus Bradley and John Fox on that thing. Scotty Montgomery, who used to be here in Pittsburgh, is on that staff as well. You may not know this, Mike Mitchell's also on that staff for Indianapolis. But the Steelers really are in need of a win. They got some games coming up that they will certainly be in, and you would expect them to close the deal. Kenny Pickett last week had a tremendous first half. You saw that game unfold where the Steelers came up and took a 3-point lead at halftime, and Pickett was operating at a 71% completion percentage in that first half. Second half, totally different. A series of 3-and-outs that led to field position situations. They didn't capitalize in the red zone, and Joe Burrow and company certainly did, even without two of their best offensive players in Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon, who went out in that game with a concussion early, but it was Samaje Perine who did the damage with 3 receiving touchdowns in that game. So the Steelers drop one. They have an opportunity with an extra day of rest. You would think that would help them when it comes to injuries, because they had a couple in that game. Jaylen Warren left. He's been a big contributor to the offense and a wonderful compliment to Najee Harris. Will he be able to return? I'm sure Mike Tomlin will address that, as well as Mason Cole, who left the game with an injury. We saw J.C. Hassenauer in his spot. Defensively, the Steelers, they got to just not give up long drives like they did. It's an experienced defense. It's an expensive defense, but they gave up drives of 79, 92, and 93 yards, and those are things that you really have to stop, given the talent and the experience on that coaching on that Steelers defensive side of the football. All right, Mike Tomlin is ready to go. Let's go upstairs and hear what he has to say on this Tomlin Tuesday.
Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a quick review from my last performance. Much like I talked about after the game, I thought the field positioning component of play was really significant. At the early part of the game, we were on the long field some at the start of the game, and I thought that affected us and them. In the second half, I thought we had really advantageous field position, but we didn't take advantage of it. TJ had an interception that put us firmly in scoring territory, and we essentially had a 3-and-out. We got 3 points, but, boy, you got to get 7 under those circumstances to support one another and to gain the type of traction that you need to control games. Another sequence in the second half, we had the ball in plus territory. We got a holding call on 1st and 10, and it pushed it to 1st and 20. I think that drive ended up 3rd and 20 plus. We got no points. That's significant. At the end of that drive, we punted the ball and punted them down into the red area and had them on the long field, and they were able to put together a 90-plus yard drive. And those are sequences that kind of change the tenor or feel of the half, if you will. And oftentimes when you're back and forth in games, that's the difference. I thought that was the tipping point. Obviously, there was a lot of positive things in the game. There's some things that were negative that we need to work on in all 3 phases. But in terms of deciding the outcome of the game, I thought that sequence and the field positioning component was extremely big. I thought our inability to make them settle for field goals defensively was a major component. We've been very good in the red zone larger part of the year. I know we're top 10. I don't follow those statistics really closely, but I know we've been really good in that area. And I just think that's a function of being in games and keeping yourself in play. You got to make people settle for field goals. You're fighting for that 4-point swing all the time when you're on the short field, and we didn't get it enough. And so those are the things that really captured our attention. I think there's a lot of things to discuss in the game, positively and negatively in all three phases. I thought, for instance, our kickoff return game was a big positive, and that's something that we've been working really hard on and pouring into and investing in, because we realized that over the latter part of the season it's going to become more significant. Latter part of the season, fatigue becomes a factor in terms of kickers' leg strength, weather conditions become a factor. Not a lot of kickoff opportunities in September. Those two teams came together in week one, and I think we didn't get any returns. We got a squib right before the half. You put those two same teams in the stadium a couple of months later, and the kickoff return game had an opportunity to be a significant component of the game from a field positioning standpoint. And so we're excited about where Sims is in that phase, and we're going to keep working in that area of the game. Obviously, this week in the foreseeable future, we're in dome-like settings, but just largely over the second half of the year, that component of the game has an opportunity to help us from a field positioning standpoint. I think Presley's been in really good rhythm in terms of flipping the field from a punting standpoint, because I don't talk about that phase a lot, and if I'm talking about field positioning, I'd be remiss if I don't mention the team's component. I'll talk for a few minutes about our next opponent, the Colts. Before I get to those guys, I'll talk about some injury things. Miles Boykin wasn't able to finish the game with the oblique or abdominal injury. We'll see where this week leads us from a participation standpoint in a practice setting. We got an extra day, and really got an extra day and a half when you think about Monday Night Football. And so we're going to leave the light on for all of these guys and remain hopeful and see where the week leads us. Same thing with Jaylen Warren. Not a significant hamstring, but his availability is in question. We'll get through the week. Mason Cole may be limited at the early portions of the week, but there's a decent level of confidence that he's going to come through the other side of it and be available to us at the end of the week. Talking about the Colts, I think if you talk about them offensively, and it starts with Taylor for us. We hadn't been in a stadium with him before, but we respect his talents and his resume, what he's been able to do and put together. We believe quality play for them centers around his exploits and what he's able to do. They had a nice significant win a couple of weeks ago in Vegas, and I think he ran for 147. There was a commitment last weekend to the run game. I think he had 22-plus carries. For us, we got to minimize his impact on the game. We can't allow them to be on schedule and minimize possession down football via an effective running game. Got a lot of respect for Matt Ryan. He's a been there, done that guy. His football intellect is on the ceiling. He makes good and fluid, quick decisions. I'd imagine his experience and the fact that he's battle tested is the reason why they went back to him. And I think I've seen some really positive results from their unit since they've done so. They got some quality eligibles that we got to work to minimize. Michael Pittman Jr. is a combat catch guy, high-volume catch guy. Pierce is a guy that's capable of taking the top off. Highly familiar with him. Went to Cincinnati and took him out to eat and participated in his pro day things and so forth. He's doing exactly what we thought he was going to be capable of doing as an NFL player. He's averaging about 15 yards a carry. He gets behind people. He makes big boy plays down the grass for them. And so that has our attention. On the defensive side of football, been in a lot of stadiums with Gus Bradley over the years. He's a fundamentalist. They're going to be small menu, big understanding. They're going to be in place. They're going to work to keep the score down because they understand what it is they're doing. If you look at the scoring, they do a really good job of keeping the scoring down and keeping a lid on things. The guys understand what it is they're trying to do. You see it play out in their adjustments and the fluidity and the consistency of their communication and adjustments. And like I mentioned, man, he was a D coordinator in Vegas last year. He was a D coordinator for the LA Chargers prior to that. Highly involved in defense in Jacksonville when he was a head coach. And so we understand how those two bodies come together, these two collectives, and the approach to defense that he brings. The four-man front is going to provide the catalyst for the ball. It's always been the case. They got quality people up front. Kwity Paye, Yannick are guys that we got to deal with. Yannick has probably been in 3 different cities with Coach Bradley, Jacksonville, Vegas, and now Indy. And so, he values the skill set that he brings in terms of applying pressure off the edge. Can't say enough about Buckner. He's just dangerous, man. He's long. He's tough to deal with inside. He's highly aware. Those guys provide the wave that the other guys ride. If we want to have a good day, we can't allow those guys to dominate the game. We got to stay on schedule in an effort to maybe minimize their ability to dominate the game. They got a quality shutdown corner in Gilmore. He matched Brown last week. He's capable of matching. They're capable of playing right and left. He's a savvy veteran guy that stays on top, that allows them to push and lean middle of the field players and coverage elsewhere. But largely, man, they're a group that is fundamentalist in their approach. They play fast. They get after the quarterback. They hunt the football. They do the things that allow them to have a high floor and keep the score down. And so we got to take care of the ball. We got to stay on schedule. We can't allow their bigs to be dominant and impact the game in the ways that they would desire for them to. I think back to some of the times that we've been in stadium with Coach Bradley before. That's kind of always the agenda. Mason Crosby in Vegas, Bosa and that group out there when he was with the Chargers, and then Calais Campbell and the collection of rushers that they had when he was down in Jacksonville. That's reflective of the type of ball they desire to play. And so we got a good understanding of that, but understanding is just a component of it. We got a lot of work ahead of us in terms of putting together a good plan and readying our guys and dividing the labor up. We're excited about Monday Night Ball. We don't take that for granted. To play in front of primetime television audience and our peers, man, that's something that we covet. But we show our respect for it by how we prepare, our singleness of purpose, and then ultimately how we play. And so that's where our focus will be. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, when you look back at the game, could you tell what was the difference offensively between your first half and the second half, and do you buy into when other players say you're predictable?
That's what they say when they're having success, and they don't say it when they're not. And so I don't worry much about that. I focus on the things that are within our control. And, when I look at the tape, there were some repeat concepts, but Cincinnati was in some repeat concepts. And that's football. When it's good on good, particularly in the latter part of the season, there's very little secrets. I don't know that we were all that surprised by anything that they did offensively. So then it comes down to execution. And that's where I like to keep our focus, man. We got to execute better. We got to make makeable plays, and that's our goal. And so that's where our focus is as we lean in on this week's opportunity and less about some of the fodder that you speak of.
It seemed as if Kenny stepped up in the pocket this week when pressure was coming and made some exceptional passes. How important is that to his growth to be able to recognize that pressure and step up?
It is significant. Very.
To the point that you made previously, that if you make the makeable plays, does that then lead to the possible expansion of the playbook?
Certainly. Certainly.
One hand wash the other there?
Certainly.
Mike, Deontay's targets are down since Kenny took over. He still doesn't have a touchdown yet this season. Is the way that he's being defended, or is Kenny just sort of had maybe tunnel vision looking for other guys?
Let's be frank, okay? Deontay is the known commodity within the group, and so people are going to have an agenda to minimize his impact on the game, particularly in significant moments. Possession down, red zone football. When you got a guy that's been a Pro Bowler, and really he's kind of the only one, and you got a young group, that's a component of it. And so how do you open up opportunities for a guy like that? Other guys make plays. Pickens had a nice game. Freiermuth had a nice game. Those things create opportunities and balance within your attack and opportunities for a guy like Deontay, which you mentioned.
How do you keep Deontay's spirits up when he's not getting the targets and he wants to be more involved?
He's a professional. Obviously, there's frustrations. He wants to be a component of why we win and a significant component. But he is also a professional, and he understands the dynamics of team play and what has to transpire for him to get opportunities. As a young guy, he's been a beneficiary of that in the past as people have focused their energies on other known guys, for example.
What have you seen from George's growth, and what more do you need to see from him?
Just to continue growth in all areas, nuances of the game, situational play, fundamentals, things specific to his position, releases, route running, hand selection. There's a lot of meat on that bone. He's a very talented guy, and he's making plays along the way, but it's reasonable to expect his growth and maturation to continue, and really to continue at an accelerated rate as he logs snaps and gains experience and learns from those.
When someone like Deontay gets the frustration, do you have to pull them aside or talk to them about that, or is it kind of just understood, hey, be patient?
There's nothing new about that. You talk about any experienced receiver that gets minimized on the weekend, there's frustration associated with it. I imagine Tyler Boyd wanted the ball more than he got it, but we were able to identify and try to minimize his impact on the game because they didn't have Chase, for example. And so that's just things that transpire each and every week inside NFL stadiums from a strategy standpoint.
We heard a lot about execution or lack of execution after Sunday. Week 12, how do you coach these guys to be able to execute on the field?
We will always be trying to put that 8 pounds in the 5-pound bag. That work is never done from a professional football standpoint. It's probably no different than shooting in NBA basketball. Everybody knows that those guys are capable shooters, but they got to be hot at the appropriate time and in game, and it's the same thing from an NFL perspective. We will never stop talking about execution. It could be week 17, 18, we'll be having that discussion because it's never ending.
Do you feel like it should be further along at this point?
I don't. I'm not in any way frustrated by its development or lack thereof. I just know as a coach, and particularly as a coach that's been doing it for a while, that it's continual.
When Jalen went down with the hamstring injury early in the game, how did that affect Najee's workload throughout the course of the game, especially early in the second half when he didn't get a lot of carries?
It affected our intentions, but, Benny Snell steps up and Naj absorbs more snaps. That's football. The attrition component of play is a significant component of play. We tend to focus our energies on those available to us and don't waste a lot of time lamenting the people that we don't have. And we have that mindset when we're planning during the course of a work week like this, or we have that same mentality when things transpire in game.
In the spirit of Thanksgiving, growing up, football, Turkey Day, to you being a head coach now, was that something that resonated back as a youngster? Does that resonate with you now?
It does. Turkey bowls as a young guy. Forget watching football. As a young guy, it was about playing football on Thanksgiving, and I just think it's part of the love affair that our country has with this game. As a professional and somebody that's been in this business, and having participated on that day in some of the Thanksgiving Day games, man, it is an honor, and it's something that we appreciate to have an opportunity to participate, to be a part of quality times for families on days like that. I remember we were in India a number of years ago. We played on Thanksgiving, and I was really appreciative of the opportunity of going into the living rooms of America, man, and being a part of that day for them. And I talked to the team about it. There are a lot of challenges in professional sport, working through the holidays and so forth, man, but it's an awesome opportunity as well, and it's something that we're appreciative of. We remember our days as football lovers when we weren't direct participants, and how significant weeks like this were, and for young people and for families, and it's an honor to be a component of it.
Like 8 quarters in here to TJ's return, how are you feeling he's performing and also dealing with the massive amount of attention that's being paid to him, and also with some of the holds he's been dealing with from the perimeter? Typical
TJ stuff. He's playing at a high level. He's playing so well. Alex has been Defensive Player of the Week since he's been back. I mentioned that. He's going to find ways to be disruptive, whether they put 2 people on him, whether they hold him or what have you. I think that's what elite guys do. I did an off-season study a number of years ago as he was moving into that elite status in an effort to have clear conversations with him. I put Von Miller's career sacks on a reel. I put some elite guys' career sacks on a reel. All of their reels work through chips and double teams and tight end body positions and so forth. Top-notch guys, they deal with a lot of things, schematics, multiple people holding, and they're still top-notch guys. And I know that TJ embraces that component of being him. And when we know that those things occur, that creates pure one-on-one opportunity for others, and everyone eats because of it. That's just a function of team football.
What are some of the challenges that come with coaching against a new head coach, an in-season change with a new play caller, both in terms of schematics and not having the in-stadium experience, and then the intangibles of the kind of juice that you get when there's...
I worry less about the intangibles because those things are outside my control. I know Jeff Saturday. I've gotten to know him over the years. I know the position he played, and I would imagine that he has an affinity for establishing the run, and that's why I led with Jonathan Taylor, for example. And so common sense analysis, but we also have 2 games to look at, 8 quarters, body of work, to put with the others and see the things that are the same, to analyze the things that are different. I'd imagine it was a deal for the Vegas Raiders a couple of weeks ago. I think with each passing day it becomes less of a deal and more about, preparedness and quality of play for all parties involved.
In terms of Kenny Pickett, what signs of growth did you see in the first half that you'd like to see continue over the last 7 games?
He's getting better in all areas, guys, just the same way that George Pickens is getting better. I'm not going to comb through it every week. It's moving in the direction that we would like it to. Sure, could it move faster? Absolutely. I don't think anybody is patient, including Kenny. This is not a patient man's business. You work while you wait, and that's what he and we are doing. But he's doing a nice job just in general.
The last time you were in Indy was for the Combine evaluating Kenny. Obviously, you got a good look at him while he was here, but what kind of things did you learn about him at the Combine? What kind of time did you spend with him specifically?
I did. I knew all I needed to know about him prior to going to Indy. I focused on guys that I knew less about.
You had 6 sacks in each of the 2 previous games, went down to 2 against the Bengals, but it still seemed like Kenny was under a lot of pressure. Was that some better blocking or maybe some better recognition of the pressure from your young quarterback?
All of the above.
There's a bunch of stats associated with punters. What do you specifically look at to say your punter is doing well or not? Is it inside the 20s?
Net punting inside the 20 relative to touchbacks. There's a ratio there, given opportunities. There's a component of play that we evaluate and value that doesn't get a lot of recognition is his placement. This is not checkers. This is chess. When you're punting in the National Football League, we want distance. We want hang time. We also want ball placement. Balls in the middle of the field are not good. Balls on the sideline are great. And so there's a lot of things that come into the evaluation of punting play in today's game. And Presley's doing a good job in year 2 of really growing in all areas and checking the boxes that we need him to check in terms of being a positive contributor to our efforts.
Mike, that directional punting was something to the sideline he did about 2 or 3 times the other day. Was that as well as he's done that?
He's been working extremely hard. I can't really pinpoint exactly right now, but it was a good performance, yes.
Back to Kenny, I know he's pretty even keeled across the board, but how does he deal with some of this adversity, these losses, when we don't get to see him behind the scenes?
He'd be better equipped to answer that than I, but he's a football junkie, man. He's a competitor. In stadium, obviously he's emotional. There's emotions, but out of stadium, he's a professional.
Anyone else?
Mike, there's some talk that maybe Jeff Saturday wasn't qualified for the job. Being part of that profession, what is your thoughts on that?
My opinion doesn't matter. I'm not a part of that organization. I'm not a part of the decision-making process. I know Jeff. I like Jeff. I think he's a dynamic personality and football lover and charismatic leader. But I have no opinion worth mentioning regarding their hiring practices or that selection in particular. It's irrelevant to me. I'm focused on the preparation of this group relative to us stepping in that stadium against that group Monday night.
The fact that they got guys like Gus Bradley, you spend a lot of time talking about in your opens, that would make something like that possible, functional with guys like that.
Again, I'm not inside their organization, and I don't know what discussions were had and what variables were significant in terms of the construction of their current makeup. But I'm sure it was tangible reasoning, and I'm sure they're comfortable with it.
Mike, inside your locker room, your organization, do you feel like all these guys are bought in right now?
I do.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Great, thanks, guys.
All right, there you hear Mike Tomlin talking about the matchup of the Colts and specifically new head coach Jeff Saturday, and basically intimating, as we welcome in Missy Matthews, the fact that he is an offensive lineman, spent 14 years doing that. So offensive linemen tend to like run games, especially one who did it so successfully with some of the guys he had in Indianapolis. Do you expect to see a lot of Jonathan Taylor, even though Jonathan Taylor not necessarily putting up the kind of numbers you would expect from him?
Certainly not the numbers we saw from him last season, but a good run game helps a lot of things. It's something the Steelers have learned maybe the hard way, but being able to get it going, getting Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, we saw that against the Saints, trying to do that again, and did a pretty decent job of that as well in the loss to the Bengals, but it helps, and especially with a young quarterback in Kenny Pickett, as Coach had mentioned, that's something that has to be consistent in its execution, as he said, trying to put 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
Those guys work a lot of that kind of stuff. It's interesting. There are a lot of former guys on that coaching staff who Jeff Saturday could tap into when it comes to information. And Coach Tomlin's last comment there was about the fact that he's talking about just what he means from bringing in an energy, a passion. Maybe that's what it is right now. Maybe he's going to defer to some of the other guys he has, calling and doing the things that a guy with no experience at head coach would probably not have that ability at this point.
Well, he was in the media business, so I'm sure he was paying close attention. But I think until you're in a locker room, in team meetings, knowing how things work, and you can't, come in cold turkey and change everything. He did change quarterbacks, and that seemed to work well for them.
That didn't make sense anyway to me.
Well, as Coach said, you don't know what's going on in Indy, but from the outside looking in, there's obviously a lot of opinions about different things. I just think, he has to surround himself with people that are still in it for the team and wanting to get better and wanting to get the wins there. So a lot of changes, but you never know. This will be the third game with him as the head coach.
And keep in mind, earlier this year, this same Indy Colt team beat the Chiefs. That's saying something. They also could have beaten the Eagles last week in a 1-point game. So it's a team that's playing well as in every game, and that's going to be the challenge for the Steelers this week. When we come back, we'll delve more into what Mike Tomlin had to say as the Steelers get ready for a trip to Indianapolis on Monday night. This is a Tomlin Tuesday and the Mike Tomlin press conference live on Pittsburgh CW and Steeler digital platforms. We'll be right back.
Want to get gear direct from the team? Shop all things black and gold at the official Steelers Pro Shop located on the North Shore. Get the latest sideline apparel and hats, jerseys of your favorite players, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can only find here. Don't forget, you aren't game day ready without a terrible towel. The Steelers Pro Shop has everything you need to be a part of the legendary Steelers Nation. Come experience the legendary shopping environment or shop online at shop.steelers.com.
Sequence where you guys got the ball at their 47 in the third quarter, fourth quarter, and a couple of penalties backed you guys up, and then you're playing field position, they go down 93 yards. How key was that whole sequence right there?
It was, obviously that was an important drive of the game because that was a point for us to, I believe, be up if we scored, I think it was. Yeah, so the penalties was all on us. Can't blame it on nobody else, can't blame it on anybody else but the people who's on the field. And I was part of that, so just gotta execute better.
Did you like what you guys were doing in the first half offensively?
Yeah, man, we were scoring, we was moving the ball. We did what we was executing our game plan. We just came out second half, just not firing, and that was just on just people on the field, nobody else.
Najee, how frustrating is it to be back in this position?
It's not good, but we're just trying to be here and stack bricks. What happened today. It was a tough one. We really wanted this one, but we got to move on to the next one.
Are there any signs of encouragement that you can take from putting together a first half like the one that you guys had?
Yeah, I do. The first half, you said?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff we put on film. Obviously, we scored points. One time, I think we were 5 for 7 on third down.
Right.
Yeah. So that was just, we're building from there. And I think today we scored 30. I think it was the first time all season scoring 30, right? Correct. So there's good, but obviously it's not good enough. And in the NFL, you need to be good enough to win these games. You need to execute. You need to execute on important downs, just like that drive we was talking about. For us to succeed, it all comes down to the big plays, and we didn't really execute on that.
What do you think was the biggest difference between the first half and second half for you guys?
I don't. I'll see in film, but I know that third down we didn't do a lot good, did we? I believe so. We didn't do as good as we did first half, so that was probably a big one.
Did the Bengals change anything the way that they were playing you guys there in the second half that was significant, you noticed?
Not that coming off, like walking off the field, not that I know, but on film I might see something, but.
when I look at the tape, there were some repeat concepts, but Cincinnati was in some repeat concepts. And that's football. When it's good on good, particularly in the latter part of the season, there's very little secrets. I don't know that we were all that surprised by anything that they did offensively. So then it comes down to execution. And that's where I like to keep our focus, man. We got to execute better. We got to make makeable plays, and that's our goal. And so that's where our focus is as we lean in on this week's opportunity and less about some of the fodder that you speak of.
That was Mike Tomlin talking about what Jermaine Pratt had to say after the game. Inside linebacker who seemed to know some of those jet sweeps were coming. He made some good plays there and said basically they knew exactly what the Steelers were running, which can be said for a lot of teams. If you stuff them, then you have a pretty good idea. So what was your take on that when you heard that comment? Because we heard Tyler Boyd say different things over the years too.
I think when you win, you have a chance to maybe run your mouth a little bit more than something you would not say if you lost the game. I also think it's a division rival. These two teams have never liked each other, and Cincinnati has gotten the upper hand of the Steelers in the past few games. So I think it's more of a, hey, we're trying to take over this division. We're not the team that you beat year in and year out. I mean, the Steelers haven't swept the Bengals since 2019. So I just think it's part of the game. It's the trash talking. It's, the stuff that's said on the field as well. I know even, their one tackle was saying that TJ Watt was whining to the refs. If you ISO TJ Watt and watch him, he does get held a lot, and it's just something that he deals with.
Yeah, and it's not unlike a coach in a basketball game who works the refs trying to get a call because he's making them aware of this kind of stuff is happening out there. And so you do it for that reason. It's more gamesmanship. We're seeing some of the plays here, and quite frankly, it is a combination of maybe play calling and execution of plays. When you don't execute, it looks bad. Like, for example, that flea flicker. That's highly debatable this week. We've been talking about that play. Some believe it's at a good time of the game after a 33-yard reception to George Pickens. A lot of other people say, well, without really an established run game in that second half, that's the wrong time to call it. If it works, it's a good play. If it doesn't, it doesn't work. Me, frankly, I didn't think there was a need for it at that particular time, but that's a debatable topic.
Right. I also think penalties really, hampered the Steelers' efforts, especially offensively in the second half. There was that one drive where there was the holding on Pat Freiermuth, a legal man downfield on J.C. Hassenauer.
Right.
I mean, they were just shooting themselves in the foot and going 3 and out, not even getting a chance to, continue the drive. You can't do that, especially when you have a lead at the half, 20-17. You get the ball first and not being able to get points. And as Coach said, even, off of T.J. Watt's interception, you need 7 points there, not just 3.
Right. We're seeing that long play that went to Pickens, and it seemed like on the wrong side of the, as he got twisted on. It wouldn't have counted anyway because of a holding call. We saw a lot of flags, you're right, Missy, and those are things that need to change. The other thing is, in this game, we saw George Pickens have a good game. He had a touchdown, 24-yarder, made some other, he dropped a potential touchdown as well, but he's become a focal point of a lot of targets, which make people wonder about Deontay Johnson, who only had 4 receptions, 21 yards in this game. Mike Tomlin answered that earlier today.
Let's be frank, okay? Deontay is the known commodity within the group, and so people are going to have an agenda to minimize his impact on the game, particularly in significant moments. Possession down, red zone football. When you got a guy that's been a Pro Bowler, and really he's kind of the only one, and you got a young group, that's a component of it. And so how do you open up opportunities for a guy like that? Other guys make plays. Pickens had a nice game. Freiermuth had a nice game. Those things create opportunities and balance within your attack and opportunities for a guy like Deontay, which you mentioned.
Yeah, you would expect more. He has no touchdown receptions, and I would never have made that bet this far into the season, that no touchdown receptions for Deontay Johnson, which brings into play now Stephon Gilmore, who's still operating at a pretty high level. Last week, he had a good role against A.J. Brown, who's one of the better receivers in the game. I would suspect then he's going to be on Pickens, or does he go on Johnson this week?
I don't know where he goes, but I do think Deontay Johnson is somebody they have to get more involved in the Steelers offense. It's great to see George Pickens, who we didn't see very much from until maybe that Cleveland game, that Thursday night game, week 3. But I do think, Ben and AB, you knew AB was going to be doubled. You knew what was going to happen, but they also had that chemistry where Ben knew where AB was always going to be. I think, Kenny Pickett not getting first or even second team reps a lot during training camp, OTAs, having Mitch Trubisky kind of being the starter the whole time, maybe that's messing with some chemistry. So I think regardless, it is good to see Pat Freiermuth involved more. I think that's something that we've all wanted to see, and not just late in the game throughout. But you have to do something to get Deontay involved. He's one of those guys that can make plays. We've seen, the sideline taps and toe taps and whatnot. So that's definitely something that I think can help them, especially since they've got the run game going.
And you're seeing a lot of him in action against Miami. That was a good second half for the Steelers. They really could have won that game earlier this year. There were a lot of good protections by the offensive line, and first down throws like that one, he was very involved. I would expect them to do more of that this week coming up, especially knowing that they're going to see some coverage now on George Pickens. It should open up. I believe that Mike Tomlin's correct with that assumption that if you start going more to Pickens, it's going to leave, Deontay at some point open, or at least more open than he's been.
Yeah, and I think, it's a longer week of preparation. You need to turn the page from the Cincinnati loss. I think it's just as difficult as the Miami one because they felt like they could win it. They could have won it. Things did not go their way towards, obviously, the second half in both of those games, but you have some extra time to get ready. You're playing inside of a dome. You're not going to be worrying about weather. On Sunday, it was cold, it was windy, but that all goes out the window when you're playing indoors.
Yeah, and Mike Tomlin at the beginning of his press conference talked about Miles Boykin, who has an injury. He may not be able to play. Who knows? And that really does kind of take away some of the depth you have at wide receiver. But I would imagine Freiermuth over the middle of the field is something. Most of these tight ends around the league have ways of getting open. He's one of them, and I can only imagine that his role will be more significant as the season rolls on.
Absolutely, and they still have Steve Sims, as well. Obviously, he's no more for special teams, but we've seen him in there on the Steelers offense again. But I agree, Pat Freiermuth seems to be that security blanket for Kenny Pickett, and when you have a rookie who, as Coach said, there's the growing pains. It's, not a patient man's business. You want to see the growth accelerate, but there's not much you can do, and there are the frustrations, and I'm sure Kenny feels the same way of wanting to be better, faster each and every week.
The one thing about Freiermuth, if you give it to him, he's going to go and give you some extra yards, maybe not on this particular play, but normally he just puts his head down and goes forward, and he will get that extra yardage over the middle of the field. So this, I thought, was one of the best.
Where he just dragged guys with him?
Yeah, that's what he's going to do. He's going to drag. But, I mean, that play right there with Kenny Pickett looking downfield, even though he's running, he's not running to run. He's running to try to find an open receiver, and he didn't cross the line of scrimmage. That's the kind of stuff you want to see more of.
Yeah, you see the heads-up plays a lot, even, knowing when to use his legs, when not to, when to get rid of the ball, but it's the consistency, and I think that's hard to expect him to be perfect as somebody who was just thrown in at halftime in week 4.
All right. We'll talk more about this matchup coming up. Indy is 4-6-1. The Steelers are 3-7. Looking to get back in the win column on Monday night in Indianapolis. We'll continue with our coverage of the Mike Tomlin press conference right here on Pittsburgh CW and Steeler digital platforms. Don't go away.
Stadium is on fire. They're enjoying what they're seeing.
We just got to read our keys and just go out there and make plays. They had some good plays. They had some guys that made some plays in the open field too. So, we just got to try to limit their plays and go out there and play our game.
Were there some concepts that crossed you guys up that broke down some communication points for you all that caught you off guard?
No, I wouldn't say. We're in position to make plays, and then their guys, they just made the plays, and we just got to keep on working and figure out what we got to do to get a win.
The fact you have been able to stack wins, especially at this point of the season, how tough is that for you guys?
Man, it's been tough for us. We sitting at 3-7. It's not a good feeling. You can tell by the energy in the locker room right now. We just got to figure out how to win, and winning in consecutive weeks, that's just a start, and then we got to just keep it going.
Is it more frustrating when you guys are able to get the turnovers, to get the sacks, but aren't able to do some of the other stuff to get the win and take advantage of those?
Yeah, really because we just Yeah, really just because, we're trying to figure out how to play a complete game. We played a few complete games this year, and those were the games that we won. So now we just have to figure out how to put everything together and finish out the game. We might start off fast, but we got to finish the whole game, and that's what we're really just trying to focus on and get to.
Some of your teammates said good defense is a consistent defense. You guys haven't been able to stack that much. Why do you think that you can't go back-to-back defensive performances like you did last week?
Man, you know, it's just small plays. You know, one play doesn't make a game, but it can mess with the whole team, you can say. So right now we're just trying to figure out whatever we need to do in practice. If we have to do more meetings or walkthroughs like we've been doing, I just continue to work and continue to stay together and try to figure out what we got to do.
You feel you definitely have the talent, right?
No, we definitely have the talent. Because when we put it out there, when it's looking good, even for this first half, when it's looking good, it's looking good. And we just got to figure out how to do it for a full game, both halves.
For over 30 years, Steelers Digest has been delivering black and gold news to your doorstep. Photography, game recaps, opinion, and statistics presented in a colorful, easy-to-read format. Don't miss another issue. Subscribe today at Steelers-Digest.com.
Typical TJ stuff. He's playing at a high level. He's playing so well. Alex has been Defensive Player of the Week since he's been back. I mentioned that. He's going to find ways to be disruptive, whether they put two people on him, whether they, hold him or what have you. I think that's what elite guys do. I did an off-season study a number of years ago as he was moving into that elite status in an effort to have clear conversations with him.
And part of that was putting on a loop, a reel, a video of guys like Von Miller and everything they went through. And it was interesting that Tomlin talked about the fact that most of those guys had to work through double teams. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what TJ Watt has been able to do. And boy, that play we saw last week, we saw it in week 1, but he was even better last week against Cincinnati, how he makes an interception on a play that you'd think, defensive backs would love to have hands like that. Many of them don't.
And Joe Burrow, was obviously asked about it after the game. He kind of threw his hands up and was like, there's not much I can do. Like, he's just one of those guys. But there was a Pro Bowl a few years ago, and Von Miller was there, and he kind of made it known that any of the young pass rushers that wanted to pick his brain, meet with him, he was more than happy to do that. TJ Watt, of course, raised his hand. And we had a chance to catch up with Von, and he said this guy's motor is unbelievable. Not just what you see from him on the field, but also just his intellect and how much he wants to know about the game. He said you can have all the moves in the world, but if you don't have that motor, it does not matter. And he said that TJ is a prime example of this. And this is, well before he was even in that conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. So I think if Von Miller is seeing that in a young TJ Watt, what's happening now is of no surprise.
And it's no coincidence also that Tomlin mentioned, Highsmith is better when TJ Watt's on the field. That makes sense. If you have someone who's going to get, not unlike what you see receivers, somebody gets doubled, someone's open. He takes advantage of that, and his development, I think, has really improved over the years because of TJ Watt, and he has 5 of his sacks in the games that Watt has returned.
Absolutely, and even the rest of the guys on the defensive front, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, I'm sure they're glad TJ Watt is back as well, and we've seen them do a good job, especially the last 2 games, of being able to stop the run. And as you said, in Indy, you anticipate that's what you're going to see from their offense. So it's good to have him back for a number of reasons, and I'm sure TJ, like everyone else, wants to see, the sack column go up, but he is still disruptive. He's still making tackles, and as you said, the interception that you just really can't put into words.
Right. Hayward's playing better, obviously, when those guys are healthy, although it doesn't explain how Cincinnati went down the field on 3 long drives. When they're all together like that, you would expect more from this defense, especially as highly paid as it is. But there were 3 scores as a result of that. Red zone was a topic of this press conference today, and Tomlin talked about it earlier.
We've been very good in the red zone larger part of the year. I know we're top 10. I don't follow those statistics really closely, but I know we've been really good in that area. And I just think that's a function of being in games and keeping yourself in play. You got to make people settle for field goals. You're fighting for that 4-point swing all the time when you're on the short field, and we didn't get it enough.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you would expect for this defense to make. They didn't. Of course, Joe Burrow's on the other side of it. That makes it a lot more difficult to do. But The one thing I noticed, I think Cincinnati ran 65 offensive plays. They weren't in third down very often, which to me says they're moving the ball quite a bit on first and second and down. When you do that, you're going to have success.
Right, and the 92-yard drive, the 93-yard drive that ends in a touchdown, that's a lot of time the defense has spent on the field, and they always say the best defense is one that's on the sidelines.
Right.
And it just seemed to snowball from there, and with the offense not being able to put together drives and going 3 and out, that's happening quickly as well. So it was just not a good recipe in the second half for the Steelers after putting a pretty strong first half together.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You got to minimize when you can, but this guy right here, T. Higgins, and that's Tyler Boyd, but Higgins was the guy. Without Jamar Chase, I thought the Steelers would try to take away Higgins specifically, but he was really effective. And then they put in an undrafted guy like Trenton Irwin, who I don't know about you, but I had never heard of him.
Just the roster move that he was called up, right?
Called up, and he ends up getting a touchdown. But again, I was just surprised that Higgins had as much opportunity to roam all over the field, and he was very successful in that.
Yeah, and I think it was disappointing, and you could see the frustration from the players being, as you said, they had their entire defense together for just the first time since week 1, so you were anticipating some better play from them, especially, Minka Fitzpatrick being able to come back from his appendectomy, and it just seemed like, especially on the back end of the defense, that's where they were just giving up these chunk plays, and even, Joe Mixon goes out, you're like, okay, that's a good thing for the Steelers defense, and then Samaje Perine comes in and, 3 touchdowns on passes, too, as Cam Hayward said after the game, just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really was, and that had a lot to do with how they lost that game, especially in the second half, 37-30. Your final score, they'll try to erase that with a win in Indianapolis. It won't be easy. It's Monday night in Indy. We'll take a break, come back with more of our coverage of the Mike Tomlin press conference. Don't go away.
Game starts at 20, that slip is empty. I gotta call KG.
KG, what up?
I got nothing for you, Fox.
Oh, come on. Jalen. You want to tell?
Yeah.
Don't call somebody on live TV.
Well, you answered. Have other friends anyway.
Marshawn, Barry.
Listen, I need some tips.
I like L.A.
L.A.?
No, Dallas. That's
Dallas.
Dallas not
Dallas?
the best. We gotta get to Miami. How about Detroit? No, Barry over there.
You know what? I'm gonna call y'all right back. Vanessa.
I got a tip for you. Always go with your gut.
I like that. Let's go with our gut.
Deontay, what do you think happened in the second half? Why couldn't you guys find a rhythm there?
Just couldn't get a rhythm. I mean, you seen it out there. I mean, we just had when we had those field positions, opportunities, we just didn't capitalize on them. So, and what happens when you don't capitalize? Obviously, stuff don't fall in your favor. So that's what happened.
Is it more what you guys didn't do, or what they did? Did they change a lot?
Nah, that's what we didn't do. I mean, like I said, we didn't capitalize on the field position whenever we had it. And, they made plays when they had stopped us or whatnot, and we just didn't make as much plays as we should have.
Deontay, what was working for you guys in the first half? Just the rhythm that you guys were in, and everything that you guys were doing. What was working?
Like you said, the rhythm we had at first. We had a little roll. Offense, we came out running the ball well. We just got to continue to run the ball well and put it on film. You can't if we don't do that, then obviously stuff like this gonna happen. So just got to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, necessarily what you want. We just didn't get off the field when we needed to. Didn't hold the field goals. We just didn't make the plays and weren't executing well tonight. And it showed. We don't execute against a guy like Joe Burrow. He'll exploit it, and he did tonight. And so we just got to be better.
Did they do something different in the second half?
I mean, they throw a lot of different combinations of routes and stuff like that. And like I said, I just think our execution was really poor. We can't beat ourselves in those times. And so we just got to be better execution-wise. And we just got to get out the field, especially in the red zone. We can't give up all those touchdowns. So I just think it's about better execution.
The long touchdown drive, is that what's bothersome?
Yeah, it sucks. We got them on the 5-yard line and take a shot, and next thing they're 30, and then go all the way down the field. It's mesmerizing. Can't let that happen. And like I said, we didn't get off the field when we needed to. We just kept scoring touchdowns, and we just got to be better at execution. Execution was poor tonight.
By the time this Steelers fan is finished drinking his Pepsi, you'll be 15 seconds closer to game time. Steelers watching. Better with Pepsi.
if you talk about them offensively, and it starts with Taylor for us, we hadn't been in a stadium with him before, but we respect his talents and his resume, what he's been able to do and put together. We believe quality play for them centers around his exploits and what he's able to do. They had a nice significant win a couple of weeks ago in Vegas, and I think he ran for 147. There was a commitment last weekend to the run game. I think he had 22-plus carries. For us, we got to minimize his impact on the game. We can't allow them to be on schedule and minimize possession down football via an effective running game.
Even though Jonathan Taylor has not been what you would expect based on his previous years, he's still effective in certain games, like what Coach Tomlin just mentioned in that Vegas game. He was really terrific, almost 150 yards rushing. But, Missy, only 3 touchdowns this year.
And 3 fumbles.
And 3 fumbles. And it's not been the same Jonathan Taylor, but yet he can still do this.
But he still could. You know, think about Joe Mixon. He didn't even have a 100-yard running game until they played the Panthers, and then he put on a complete show. You know, he has that it factor. He has the capability of doing it. It's the execution. The same thing we're talking about with the Steelers offense. So you don't want to be the team where he pops off and has one of those ridiculous games. But the last 2 games he has, you know, last week against Philly, 84 yards, but his coach said 147 the previous week against the Raiders.
Yeah, and he's capable of doing it. We've seen the Steelers shut down different guys. Alvin Kamara is one of them, although I thought that was more just a coaching malfunction there by New Orleans, and he only touched the ball 8 times. These are guys, and I would include Najee Harris in this discussion. He has to touch the ball a lot more, and more of it you see. Normally, the more success you'll see, like good running backs, need to be fed the football.
Well, hopefully the Steelers' run defense, who has been working the past 2 games, continues. And, you know, we're not talking about Jonathan Taylor next week and what he was able to do against the Steelers on Monday night.
Yeah, then you also have Matt Ryan. He's a veteran back there. Mike Tomlin in his career has never lost to him. They're 0-3 is Mike Ryan against the Tomlin-led teams. But, you know, he spent a lot of time talking about what he does, you know, mentally, cerebrally. He's a good understander of the game. He's got all that experience. Now, he doesn't move very much. The Steelers have had success against guys like that. Tom Brady doesn't move much. They were good that day against him. Dalton, for the most part, doesn't move like he used to. This guy doesn't move at all.
But still, you know, having that intellectual high ceiling, I think, is what Coach referred to it during the press conference, and being able to put the ball in the right spot and knowing where guys are supposed to be, and, you know, helping other people know what to do. That, you know, that is something that does go in their favor.
Yeah, he's a veteran, and Jeff Saturday wasted no time in reinserting him as the quarterback, and that's what they paid him a lot of money for. You know, I was surprised that they originally said we're going to go to Sam Ettinger, and they immediately changed as soon as they changed coaches. So I don't know what that was all about, and I don't know if it came from Irsay up top, but you're spending a lot of money on Matt Ryan. You owe him another year, too.
Right.
So they're going to try to get their bang for their buck out of him.
And they also have a different play caller now as well in Parks Frazier, excuse me.
So we'll see how that goes. But the Steelers, you know, have been good at getting to the quarterback when they're all healthy. Not so much in the last couple of games. Watt's back now. Minka's back now with another game under his belt. And keep in mind that Indianapolis has given up 40 sacks on the year. So that's an invitation, once again, to try to do something. We haven't seen the Steelers do a lot of exotic blitzing. Would this be a good time to do it, do you think? Although, again, you got a veteran back there who understands what comes at you from all angles.
I don't really care how they get to the quarterback, but I'd love to see a performance like we saw week 1, because that just seemed to be working really well. And as you said, having the same guys this game, whatever it takes.
We'll take a break, come back. Injury update for you in case you missed it. The Steelers have some injury concerns, although Mike Tomlin was somewhat optimistic about a couple of them. We'll talk about that and more as we continue right here with a Tomlin Tuesday. It's the Mike Tomlin press conference.
Welcome back to Ford Truck Talk. Today we're looking at the new F-150.
The official truck of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow, did you see that lane change?
Another smooth play by the F-150 with great execution of that parallel park job.
Absolutely stunning.
Newcomers, take note.
And now you too can win this Ford F-150.
Professional, show-stopping, built Ford tough. But we shouldn't expect anything else from the best-selling trucks in Pittsburgh.
What would you deem to be the biggest problems on those 2 90-yard drives that they had, the inability to get them off the field? Where did they hurt you the most there?
I think we weren't winning our one-on-ones. You know, they're making good plays on the ball down the field, catching out routes, extending the play after that. You know, we just got to tighten up in the back end, coverage-wise,
and allow pressure to the quarterback. It's too easy.
How big was that sequence where you guys had decent field position? I think on their 47, the offense stalled, and then they came back, went on that 93-yard drive. How big was that sequence right there?
It was big. They scored 7 on a 93-yard drive. That's huge for them. That's time off the clock. They did what they wanted to do, so that's big for them.
Higgins really gassed you guys in man-to-man situations. What was it that he was doing that made him such an effective player today against you guys?
Say it again.
Higgins kind of gassed you guys in man-to-man situations all day. What was it about him that made him hard to cover and made you guys unable to stop him for the most part today?
I wouldn't say all that. I think they do a great job of scheming him to get open, not giving us the same looks, different routes when they do show the same looks. And so, I mean, he's a good player. Good players make good plays.
Were there things they did today that you guys didn't see on film or weren't prepared for to get some of those opportunities?
No, I mean, we just have to make more plays on the ball, be in better position. I mean, you got to give them credit. They got a good team, and they were able to get the job today.
Levi, are they able to have success with the running backs passing them the football?
I don't know. We got to go back and look at film. I'm covering receivers most of the part, and so go back and look and see, what's what. But like I said, they got good backs too, you know what I mean? And so when you got guys who can make plays, especially in the backfield, you have to be alert where they're at.
Could your favorite casino app be even better and faster than ever? You bet, because the all-new BetParks app has been built around what you really want. With easier sign-up, faster withdrawals, and all the slots and table games you love. Plus, make your first deposit and get a 100% bonus match up to $750. And 500 free spins. So, are all of your favorite games just a tap away? You bet. BetParks.
Annie Missy Matthews, who posted this about the injuries. So, Missy, it doesn't seem to be as bad for the top two on that list. Maybe not so much for Miles Boykin.
Yeah, I think having an extra day getting ready for Monday Night Football is always a good thing. Mason Cole, as coach said, will be limited in the early portions of the week. You'd love to get Jaylen Warren back, being what we saw with him and Najee Harris against the Saints. He left pretty quickly against the Bengals on Sunday, but Benny Snell did step in there. So definitely something to keep an eye on, but this is a short injury list. We've had pretty substantial ones in recent weeks, so I'll take that.
And every team is challenged. We saw Jamar Chase not there. We saw Mixon get injured. Philadelphia's had to deal without Dallas Goedert. I mean, these are big injuries to big-time players, and yet the Steelers, for the most part now, have everyone healthy, especially defensively. I would expect a much better effort defensively against this team on Monday.
Yes, the only guy that didn't play was Akilla Witherspoon that's still dealing with injuries, but as you said, having Minka, TJ, and Cam Hayward, those guys back on defense, it's good to see.
Yeah, and I think the pride of that unit itself will make them play a lot better in this game. And, if the offense gets field position like they did last week, they need to take advantage of it, not 3. They need to get 6 or 7, whatever the case may be, or 8 if they decide to go for 2. But you can't settle for 3 points. And that's going to do it, Missy. Always a pleasure. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Pomp.
That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again next Tuesday. That's right after the Monday night game on Monday night. So we'll look forward to another edition of the Mike Tomlin Press Conference. Have a great Thanksgiving.